Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson. I'm from BrightShine right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff. It's in the state of Tennessee. Today's date, Sunday afternoon, August the 17th, 2025, time 2:32 p.m. First thing, thank you for my family, my support for you. Continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area and continue to further my education. And I'm continuing to further my education, trying to pursue my associate degree in business administration, contract marketing. Present time, took a break and going to school in the future. I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna earn my associate degree as well as other degrees. Now, I'm gonna start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff in the state of Tennessee. Today's date is Sunday afternoon, August the 17th, 2025, time 2:33 p.m. First, I'm going to say thank you to my family, my support for you. Continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area and continue to further my education, pursuing my associate degree in business administration, contract and marketing. But at the present time, I took a break and going to school. In the future, I'm going to go back to school, earn my associate degree in business administration, contract and marketing, as well as other degrees. Now, first I want to say thank you to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for blessing me as well as all of us to be able to see another day and to say thanks. And say thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Continue to pray about wars that are being fought all over the world, that they can end, that it can be peace. And these natural disasters, and they are naturally, and they cause disasters, and they're not just in one location. They in every location on this earth, on this globe, on this planet. And for us as human beings to, as well as all God's creation, to survive, we need God's help. So continue to pray to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for help with these natural disasters. And just continue to pray. Now, on today's video, we're going to continue to with prehistoric religion, as well as traditional or ancient or African religion. Continue to talk, because indefinitely we're gonna be on this. Now, but if it's a need that I gotta refer back to information or things that's been talked about, then of course I can always do a review. Now, on today's video, like I said, we're going to continue to refer to now, let me just touch on this because it's a very serious thing. Because that's one, not the only. That's one of the main reasons why I take the time that I do to talk about religion and other issues as well. Because individuals been lying, and when they lie, they try to be violent. For example, the Indo-European lie to other Indo-Europeans and try to be violent. Matter of fact, they don't just try; they be violent. For example, barbarism, Scythianism, Hellenism, for example, being violent and just being violent, period. And then you can throw that polytheist stuff in there, because that's what these white people doing today, a bunch of fake polytheists with all this false polytheism. And then go around having anal sex and broadcasting anal sex. And then you got the so-called gang and the mob. Gang is a German word. Look it up in the dictionary. Gang mean go in German. The people in Germany, the German speaking people, in English is a German language, but people in Germany and these German speaking nations, countries, they speak German. They speak German. And then you go to these Latin countries with the word mob, Latin speaking nations like Spanish and Portuguese, French, Italian, Romania. They speak Latin languages. So when you say mob, for one of the definitions of mob is a woman's cap. So like I said, people lie and try to be violent. Now, when it comes to this so-called gang mob here in the United States of America, put that suffix on the end, gangster, gang plus stir, and mobster, mob plus stir. Here in the United States of America and U.S. territories, we have, of course, you have the Indo-Europeans who live here in America, going around being violent and being gangs. The whites. But then you have all these black / African Americans who were forcibly brought over here from sub-Saharan Africa to be slaves first to the Europeans. It took some years for slavery to end. But after slavery ended, there was still oppression, Jim Crow, and violence. The Ku Klux Klan was enforcing the Europeans' rule over former slaves to keep us oppressed. And it took many, many years, like the civil rights movement as well as human rights, to end all that and continue to work today toward equality and things as they progress, advancements in all aspects of life. And so we can talk about Chicago, and now during the early 1900s, we as black/African Americans, many of us lived in this nation were up under Jim Crow. Was not just in a certain region. Segregation was just segregation nationwide. And Jim Crow was just Jim Crow. It didn't make no difference what part of the nation we as African Americans, as /blacks, didn't have any civil rights, human rights, period. And during that period of time, the early 1900s, what you call gangs and mobs and street hustling, the dirty sheiks and the wailing sheepers in Chicago. And because of the dirty sheiks and the wailing sheepers they started, the dirty sheiks and the wailing sheepers, they started the Imperial Chaplains in the 14th Street Clovers. They created the Imperial Chaplains and the 14th Street Clovers. And that was over on Halstead Street. And later on, the Clovers and the Chaplains, they moved over to North Lawndale in Chicago and the near west side of Chicago. Now, African Americans, blacks/African Americans, had been hearing about Chicago in the South. In the newspaper, the Chicago Defender newspaper, which was, like I said, a Chicago newspaper, Chicago Defender. To lead the South, the Chicago Defender was telling African Americans to lead the South and come to Chicago as well. And then there were other cities in the north because that was just industrialization. So Chicago wasn't the only place that African Americans, black / African Americans, were coming to. And most of the blacks / African Americans who came from down south, they came up to Chicago. They came on the south side of Chicago. Like I said, on the south side of Chicago. And so once you had all these black / African Americans coming up to Chicago, like I said, they were being mostly put in, because the west side was just off limits, period, red line and all that. But the south side of Chicago, black / African American coming from down south was coming in the south side of Chicago. And so, because of the chaplains in the clovers, which was started by the dirty sheets and the willing sheep, a lot of things began to change for black / African Americans in Chicago. Because of course, the whites, they resisted black / African Americans coming up to Chicago. And in the process, during the 50s, one of the gangs that broke away from the Clovers and the Chaplains and was the Egyptian Cobras. So And so when it comes down to all that gang and all this stuff, over the years, the vice lords, from Peplo Perry, and then right, here we go. Now, in 1964, like I said on today's video, we're going to get back on prehistoric history and everything. So this is one of the reasons why I make my video, is because I know that people lied to other people. See, one of the things about the dirty sheets and the well she was the Indo-European. We as black/African Americans were forcibly brought over here. This Indo-European, the Germans, the French, the Latins, instead of saying French, that's just the Germans, the Latins, the Greeks, the Persians or Iranians, the Iranians, the Armenians, Slavics, you see, Armenians, Iranians, you got Slavics, the Indo-Europeans. And those that were living in Western Europe, they oppressed each other first. All this fighting and wars, and then went from oppressing each other, oppressing others on this earth, on this globe, on this planet. And a lot of this stuff about religion, about God, is at the root of the problem. How many gods it is? One God or two or more gods? You know, is a God male or female and all that? So, at the root of the problem is what people believe about the supreme being or beings. And so the Indo-European for a long period of time, like I say, fought wars with each other. Especially the warfare went from swords and knives to guns and bombs. And it still was about the same thing, religion. The Catholic Church, a lot of Europeans became Catholics. For example, Constantine was the emperor of the Roman Empire. He converted to be a Catholic from polytheists. And so, because many Europeans were being martyred by the Romans, but after Constantine became the emperor, he ended martyrdom. But still the issue about religion didn't end. Because while he was sitting on the throne, at that very moment, Constantine had at the Council of Nicaea, had to deal with Arianism. And so, after that, after the Council of Nicaea, the Catholic Church was continuing to teach, was continuing to teach, and later on, St. Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, in his 39th festal letter, Easter letter, had banned all non-Christian writing. Basically, him and all the other bishops in the Catholic Church, they went around and collected all that Gnostic theologian writing and destroyed it. Some of that Gnostic theologian writing didn't get destroyed. The Askew Codex, the Berlin Codex, the Bruce Codex didn't get destroyed, and the Nag Hammadi Library didn't get destroyed. Gnosticism really wasn't any influence behind it. And later on, during the Protestant, it gained a little more influence. But it, through war, because of war, a lot of the people died in the war. The religious war that was being fought because what Martin Luther and many of the so-called Protestants tried to bring up things about the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church had Catholic reforms to address issues about the Catholic Church. And like I said, wars were being fought, religious wars were being fought. But the Protestants wasn't necessarily winning anything. They was really exiles. The Catholics really fought against the Protestants. And many other Protestants were exiles. They lost land and lives. Many of them so-called Protestants, them Europeans, they left Europe, came to America. Not the Catholics, the Protestants. They left Europe and came to America. Now, the first and Native Americans are already living here in America. First, the Indo-Europeans who came over here, the Protestants, they committed atrocities against the first and Native Americans. And in the process of committing those atrocities, they brought black/African Americans from sub-Saharan Africa as slaves. They had already been the East African slave trade or the Arab slave trade prior to the West African slave trade or transatlantic slave trade. But like I said, it was the Protestants, not the Catholics. And for many, many years, black/African Americans suffered oppression. Until the end of slavery. And the only way that slavery was really going to end, it had to be a civil war between the states. And so, the Indo-Europeans who came over here from Europe, the Protestants, this so-called Gnostic nonsense, which is white supremacy. And nothing but a big lie. Nobody speaks that language but the Indo-European, the demiurge. That's Indo-European, like Greek. And that ignorance, claiming that this demiurge was a dumb god who created the material world. It's a lie. What these Indo-Europeans call themselves trying to practice more than one religion at the same time, calling themselves syncretizing. On one hand, they trying to be a polytheist. Then on the other hand, you're trying to be a Gnostic. And then on another hand, you trying to be a Protestant. And what you're really saying is that you just lying. And trying to have anal sex. And so, when it comes to Chicago, that's what them Indo-Europeans were doing here in the United States of America, oppressing black/African Americans who had been forcibly brought to this country from sub-Saharan Africa. So the dirty sheets and willing shivas, black/African American, living here in the United States of America, had already established 14th Street Clovers and the Pure Chapel. Now, the Vice Lord, Evan Pepperlo Perry, after he'd already started, the Vice Lord had conquered many of those so-called social clubs, as well as the Imperial Chapel of 14th Street Code, and was still having wars with the Egyptian codes. And so, when the Vice Lord was still forming, different branches and factions. In 1964, in July 1964, Edwin Pepperlo Perry, Bobby Gore, Alfonso Alfred, Leonard Calloway, and J.W. They were hanging out on 16th Street, drinking bottles of wine, and throwing the bottles into the vacant lots in the streets. Then you had younger vice lords were coming around that night talking about smashing rival gangs. They were already beaten to a pulp. Some of these gangs were already asking for mercy to not take any more punishment. But there was nothing else to do in the neighborhood but be big and bad. This is until the older guys came up with an idea based upon how they were seeing the destruction and damage they had caused in the community. The guys decided on an idea after some debating to go about opening legitimate business and working to better the community. This was a major breakthrough for the vice lords, and on that night they became conservative vice lords again. The first order of business was for the vice lord to put a stop to the mayhem around them. Vice lords worked as mediators to stop violence and put an end to gang wars. Vice lords even stopped fighting with Egyptian cobras, which allowed vice lords to move into the K-Town section of the North Lawndale neighborhood west of Pulaski Road, and this allowed them mobility to move into the West Garfield Park community. Vice lords acted as kind of like police or guardian angels watching over businesses and people in the neighborhood, so harm would not come. The challenge of all this was the police had a negative outlook on the vice lords, and young men still felt the despair of not having opportunity to succeed that still led them to crime. The vice lord knew the best thing they needed on the west side was its own economy with businesses that could invest in the community and bring employment for youth. This part of the city was barren and was a complete slum due to extreme economic poverty. Without revenue generating businesses, not enough city tax dollars could go into renovations and maintenance to the neighborhood, leaving the area deteriorating. Now, in the year 1965, George T. Sims Jr. was appointed commander of the Fillmore District and the first black commander of that district as well. The older vice lords used this appointment to their advantage to further their new direction. The vice lord leaders wanted to speak with Sim, inform him about their new direction, and for suggestions to steer youth away from crime and gangbanging. After this, the streets of North Lawndale slowly began to improve. In the year 1966, the Vice Lord New Cause was bringing in more positive attention as they began to work very closely with Egyptian Cobras, Black P-Stones, and Black Disciples on bettering their communities and putting an end to violence. In the summer of that year, Martin Luther King came to Chicago and stayed in North Lawndale to help protest during the West Side riots of 1966. Martin Luther King planned a march through the mostly white areas of the south side of Chicago in protest. The Vice Lords, Disciples, and Stones were ready to march alongside Dr. King, but after a remark was overheard from one of King's men that they didn't need gangbangers to help, Edwin Perry gave one quick signal with his hand, and all the gangs dispersed and withdrew aid. Later that night, Dr. King summoned Edwin Perry, Bobby Gore, and a few other leaders to where he was staying and told them he didn't back that statement about not needing the gangs for support. Instead, he expressed that he needed them, and after that, the Vice Lords and their allies marched alongside Dr. King. After this march, the Vice Lords started to get major attention that summer as groups were coming to North Lawndale to speak to the Vice Lord and admire their progress. The Deacons of Defense, RAM, ACT as examples came to meet the Vice Lords, and this is what got the ball rolling. Everyone could come meet the Vice Lords at the new clubhouse that opened a little earlier that year at 3655 West 16th Street. The older Vice Lords scrapped all the money they got from hustling over the years and pooled it all together to open this pool room. This became the first legitimate conservative Vice Lord building in history, and it was made possible by Vice Lord members' hard-earned money and not government grants. But the grants were soon to come. And this comes from the source, A Nation of Lords, the autobiography of the Vice Lords. This is the second edition. And leading off the new year in 1967, Chicago area was sacked with horrible snowstorms and blinding blizzards that left much of the city buried. This blizzard was so hard that cars couldn't even move about in the city, which provided a perfect lawless environment for young Vice Lords. In the mid-60s, older Vice Lords struggled to contain the younger Lords, and this blizzard made it much worse as now the young Lords had a blast ripping off one store after another, stealing, looting, and burglarizing the Jewish-owned businesses. Some of the older Vice Lords even got in on the action. The problem with this was it drew negative attention to the Vice Lords and drove out more business owners out of the neighborhood even after the winter was over. This brought negative attention, but this negative attention turned into a positive as now Commander Sims was concerned that the summer 1967 would become a repeat of the summer of 66. Commander Sims, he arranged a meeting with Vice Lord leaders to discuss how to prevent chaos. At this meeting will also be David Dowley from Newbury, Massachusetts, of the Trans-Century Corporation, who was sent to 11 cities across the nation to investigate working with impoverished areas and conducting research. Dowley's research was key to the government's decision or other organizations linked to the government granting money to the Vice Lord. David Dowley moved to North Lawndale and lived on these streets among vice lords. Dowley interviewed vice lords all over the neighborhood and helped the CBLs form Operation Bootstrap, which was a coalition of conservative vice lords, Egyptian Cobras, and Roman Saints that were geared toward working with West Side major corporations to prevent riots that would cost these companies millions of dollars. These companies bootstrap worked with Sears Roebuck, Ryerson Steel, Illinois Bell, Western Electric, and others. During that summer, vice lords, Cobras, and Saints policed the neighborhood and broke up gang meetings and even stopped the Black Panthers from creating a plan to destroy businesses and begin looting. There were challenges that summer and scandals rocked the city and the nation that could have easily triggered more rioting, but the conservative vice lord led Operation Bootstrap stopped the violence because they had a bigger plan in mind. And the source, A Nation of Lords, the autobiography of the vice lord, second edition. The conservative vice lord began to come to a full realization that burning down neighborhoods and fighting the white man was not the way to go anymore. From the years 1958 to 1964, they violently revolted against society. But now the mindset had changed. Vice lords realized that fighting the government and white people only brought negative images to not only their organization, but to the black man. It became time to show power in a different way by showing restraint and asking for help from the city and government. Vice lords wanted to see black-owned businesses, jobs for blacks, clean and safe streets, and they knew that violence was not the answer to achieving those goals. This is mostly long-lost history that is buried and underpublished. A Nation of Lords is an excellent autobiography that tells the whole story about the full vice lord intention. But sadly, most of the general public never picked up a copy of this book, so I will continue sharing highlights from the book, blended with my personal knowledge, so you, as the reader, can really understand what the vice lord nation was really trying to accomplish here. I strongly recommend A Nation of Lords, but I will cover some major highlights as I've already done so far. The vice lord struggle has often been in the same class as the Black Panthers or even the Black Peace Stone, but this is different because the vice lord had the goal of fully working with the white man and the government, police, etc., to get a helping hand to rebuild the North Lawndale community and create a sustainable economy. They were hoping this model would then spread to the rest of the black ghettos citywide, and then eventually help all poor black people of all colors. Help all poor people of all colors. The ultimate failure rests upon the city and the mayor at the time that didn't adhere enough to vice lord pleas for assistance with change. Before the summer of 1967, Alderman George Collins promised that if the vice lord would keep riots off the streets that summer, he would help CBL open an ice cream parlor. As the summer progressed, not only did vice lord prevent rioting, they even set up divisions within themselves that dealt with education, law, order, and justice. On September 11, 1967, Alderman Collins lived up to his promise and incorporated CBL Incorporated as a non-profit organization and began opening a storefront at 16th and Lawndale, which brought the opening of Teen Town later. David Dowley had just submitted his report in November to the Trans Century Corporation, which was a major piece to convince the federal government to give money to conservative vice lord Incorporated. David was then trying to get the Rockefeller Foundation to fund the $15,000 Teen Town needed to open, which should have been simply due to the fact it didn't need major committee approval. After several negotiations with the YMCA and Bootstrap, the money was at last granted in February 1968, and Teen Town opened on April 4, 1968. YMCA acted as an auditor for all money. CVL will receive to make sure the gang used the money in the places they promised to use it, but CVL leaders need to make it clear that the YMCA was not to get the money direct and then give it to CVL. Also, CVL wanted to assure that Bootstrap was a separate organization and not to get the funds either. Sadly, on the same day Teen Town opened and the big announcement was to go out, the assassination of Martin Luther King quickly stole the headlines and diverted attention away from this colossal moment. To make matters worse, rioting went on uncontrollably on the west side as everything burned. Vice Lord decided not to partake in the rioting as an organization, but they did nothing to stop it like they did in the summer of '67. The store owners never showed any gratitude for the previous summer, so Vice Lord just stayed out and let it all burn while they protected Teen Town and the pool hall. Rioters only targeted white-owned businesses anyway, and after the riots, while business owners stopped doing business in the area, the Vice Lord opened a relief station right after the riots at 3720 West 16th Street to pass out food and supplies to hundreds of families affected by the rioting. Source: The Nation of Lords, the autobiography of the Vice Lord, 2nd edition. In the aftermath of the rioting, CBL sent letters to the mayor's office pleading for assistance with the transformation of the neighborhood and bring more grants to help establish a fully functioning community. These letters were ignored by the mayor. Even though Mayor Daley was not on board, CBL still came across more grant money in the years of 1968 and 1969. Of course, the best form of help would have needed to come from the city itself. But for now, grants from several private and smaller federal programs will have to do. Grants came in from the Field Foundation for $25,000, $130,000 from the Ford Foundation, $36,000 from the Department of Labor, and $60,000 from W. Clement Stone. The money was used to open multiple legitimate companies and community centers. The business were Teen Town at 3700 West 16th Street, the African Line at 3702 West 16th Street, the House of Lords at 3724 West 16th Street, and one at 3414 West 15th Street, Art and Soul at 3742 West 16th Street, Taste the Freeze at 18th and Pulaski, and California and Florida, Simone, which was a business venture with Sammy Davis Jr. for African American women's beauty products, Westside Community Development Center, Management Training Institute, Street Academy, Tenants Rights Action Group, Art and Soul Youth Organization United. Vice Lord took part in programs to beautify the neighborhood, rehabbing buildings, removing trash, and planting gardens. Vice Lord also became educated on tenants' rights, working on a non-for-profit basis as they successfully fought legal battles against crooked landlords, forcing landlords to provide better tenancy and to push back on unfair evictions. Vice Lord was also working to bring more employment within the community so people in the neighborhood didn't have to commute too far away. Places such as out in the suburbs, having employment locally could also provide more equal pay. The Source: A Nation of Lords, the autobiography for the Vice Lord, 2nd edition. All right, let me. Okay, now. But the point I wanted to make today is that people doing things when you don't listen, to people telling you what's right. And that's what the situation is today in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, as well as in America. When people tell you what's right, you don't want to listen. You know, for example, the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible. When it's about to tell you what's right, you don't want to listen. There's a lot of good information in the Holy Bible. It's telling you what's right. Old Testament and New Testament. Old Testament and New Testament. Telling you what's right. Just like all this nonsense about the Protestants. The Catholic Church was telling you what's right. But see, the so-called Indo-European who didn't want to listen to the Catholic Church, didn't want to listen, made up a bunch of lies, talking about they reject church tradition, and made up some more lies, talking about just believe, and then made up some more lies, talking about a priesthood of believers. That what got you in the situation you're in today. Deliberately and intentionally misinterpreting the Holy Bible. Claiming that, just like me sitting here, a priesthood of believers. I'm going to read the Bible myself. No. You don't even know how much education I got. You don't even know if I know how to read, write, do math, or anything. But since being that I'm here in the United States of America, the Holy Bible has been printed, the King James Version of the Holy Bible in English, I'm just going to read it myself. And then I'm going to go around outside talking about what I read in the Holy Bible. How long the Old Testament been around? Since before. Old Testament been around a long time. A long time. The Old Testament been around a long time. And do you think people need me to tell them about the Old Testament? No. First of all, there's plenty of Jews on this earth, on this globe, on this planet. Talking about the Old Testament, it's plenty of Jews. Plenty. And they've been around a long time. For example, Rabbi Akiva, one of the most respected rabbis in the Jewish faith. Rabbi Akiva. One of the things Rabbi Akiva made clear, and he said, he did not want Judaism to be influenced by Gnosticism, and he did not want Judaism to be influenced by that Grecian philosophy. When somebody tell you what's right, you ain't want to listen. You ain't want to listen. The Catholic Church, the New Testament, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Catholic Church, you ain't want to listen. You ain't want to listen. You didn't want to listen. The 12 apostles who were taught by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God. You ain't want to listen. You didn't want to listen. Now you want to reject church tradition. Then you want to sit around talking about just believe. Then you want to sit around talking about a priesthood of believers. But you ain't want to listen to the 12 apostles who were taught by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the Son of God. You didn't want to listen. You didn't want to listen. It's the same thing. See, their so-called blood gang, crip gang, see, people who were living down here in the tri-state area, for example, in the state of Tennessee, the state of Mississippi, because see, the state of Mississippi My grandmama, my granddad, on my mama's side and my dad's side, they were from Mississippi. You had people from Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, about in the 1960s. There were, before the 1960s, you had people that were moving around. But not like they were after the civil rights movement. Yeah, like we just got through reading. The Chicago Film newspaper telling black / African Americans come to Chicago as well as some of the other northern cities for jobs and to get away from all that Jim Crow. But then there was other things people were doing, mainly after the civil rights movement during the 60s, moving to Los Angeles, going out west. And the same thing, people talking about gangs and talking about that Gnostic, trying to use the Nagamon library the same thing, gang. But where did the people come from? A lot of the people that were moved to Los Angeles, they came from down here in the South. Because a lot of them, instead of moving up north to Chicago, because see, one thing don't forget, a lot of the people that were down south, see, some people had family members that went to Chicago in Illinois and surrounding states, to Wisconsin and Iowa, to Michigan, Minnesota, even Ohio, and so on and so forth, to Kentucky. Some people, instead, they didn't go that far, they went to Missouri. But some of them same people had family members who were still down here. You know where they went? They went out to Los Angeles. They went out to Los Angeles, California. And when they went out there, the same nonsense. The gang. Gang. Now today you got these individuals, these misled, misguided individuals from the East Coast going around talking about they in the Blood gang and the Crip gang. And then trying to go around in places like the city of Memphis, Shelby County, in other parts of the state, in Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, talking about they in a gang. And like I've been telling you who know, the Nagamon Library of Gnostic, you ain't number some gay. And I ain't just, I ain't just calling nobody that. Yeah. Just like on that program, see, when you see individuals, this is what they be doing. You see how they be talking about individuals in these Hollywood movies, talking about people been to prison and so on and so forth, and they be gay. They not telling no lie. But it just ain't the people that went to prison. It's these people in these gangs, they gay. They trans sexuals, they transgender, transsexual. They gay. And when it comes to some of these females, act like a boy and all that stuff. But see, they ain't really just no gang thing. You just got girls, period. And that stuff you talking about. But these so-called men with this gay, see, they've been influenced by this Gnostic. That's where that comes. And then being around females, being around women, you run your mouth, and then that's where some, not all, females, they be getting this idea in their mind. And then they be walking around talking about they in a gang, acting like they a man, acting like they a boy. But it comes from them being influenced by these gay gang men in the game. But do girls, but you ain't have to be influenced in that way, But what you see when it comes to a girl or females or a woman, you hanging around a bunch of gay guys in the game. So you be influenced by what they say. And based on what they say, you act just like them. Gay. A lesbian. That's the reason why. Because you be influenced by the gay guys in the game. So for you to be in the game and to fit in the game, you act just like them gay guys in the game. But girls, females, women, what you talking about, it may be a female or a girl or a woman might have those, liking for girls, you know what I'm saying? But on that, some girls wouldn't say, because they always being approached by a man. Even girls will tell you that. Some of the girls, some of the females, some of the women, they'll tell you themselves that if you thought, some women, they wouldn't, you couldn't even tell. You couldn't even tell that she was a lesbian. Because a lot of girls, females, women, they get approached by men, and what do? They end up being sexually involved with a man. So some of them, they'll just say, well, I'm about to say, a lot of them won't even say that. They'll just be with a man. And then possibly, she might just be like, well, I've been trying to resist it or been trying not to do things, but I end up doing something with a girl. Oh, me and one female, I had this attraction. You see what I'm saying? That's how that is. But when it comes to the game, see, this was some girls, some females, some women. They ain't even got to have sex with no man. They just being associated or affiliated with the game. With these gay guys in the game. And them gay guys in the game be influencing the girls, the females, the women. Because that's who they listening to. And then what do? They act just like them. They dress like, they talk like, they walk like them gay guys. When they see them gay guys kissing another man, you know what they do to their mind. They think that's right. Then what do? Instead of having sex with the men or the guys or the boys in the gang, what they do? They try to do what? They try to find a female, a girl or a woman, but they do what? They act just like one of the gay guys. They dress like one of the gay guys. Because see, like we just got to say, it could be some girl, but you wouldn't be able to tell. Because they don't dress like that. They don't act like that. They don't talk like that. They don't walk like that. So, you know, that, but being that blood gang, that Crip gang, that's what you know what I'm saying? Talking about some bitches on the East Coast. Yeah, you got to go way out there to Los Angeles, California. Now, you know, me sitting here, you know, the Nagma Library. Blind, deaf, and dumb. Field house niggas. Field house niggas. Blind, deaf, and dumb. Field house niggas. Serving their oppressor, the white man. That's what you're doing. Because that's all Gnostic is. White supremacy. It ain't nothing but the Indo-Europeans. Nothing but Indo-Europeans. In and everything about Gnostic, there ain't nothing but Indo-Europeans. And your blind, deaf, and dumb ass living right here in the United States of America. Blind, deaf, and dumb. You either in the field or in the house. Or in your case, you just go from both. You don't never take no risk. They put your ass out in the field to work. Then they make you leave the field. Put your ass in the house to finish doing housework and work. You work on the house, outside. You paint the house. Hell, you built the goddamn house for them. You cut the grass, edge the lawn, trim the hedges. Like we just got to say, you paint the house when it needs to be painted. See, you do all the outside work on the house. If the plumbing go bad, your asshole got to fix the plumbing, the electricity. You do work on the inside of the house. You had to paint the house on the inside as well. You the maid and the butler. You all that. I'm dead serious. You all that. You the handyman. But hell, you be doing the work that the maid supposed to be doing. And her lazy ass don't do nothing but just walk around in the house. Sometimes the slave might be having sex with her. But your blind, deaf, and dumb ass, you do any and everything to serve your master, the Indo-European. Blind, deaf, and dumb. The Nagama Library. Man. They found a Dead Sea Scroll a year later. They found the Nagama Library in 1945. They found the Dead Sea Scroll in 1946. It took 10 years for them to get all the information pertaining to the Dead Sea Scroll. The majority, a lot of it was the Old Testament. And it's very old. Very old. When they dated it, very old. Very, very old. But when it comes to the vice lords, they continue to attempt positive changes in the years of 1969 through 1973, as reports of members committing violent crime now began to take back over the newspaper in the early 1970s. CVL Incorporated still kept going and kept its charter in the early 70s. CVL also worked with Black P. Stone and Black Gangster Disciples with the LSD Coalition, or Lower Stone and Disciples. The LSD Coalition heavily advocated for employment rights for Black Chicagoans until it ended in 1973. And between the years of 1964 through 1969, the vice lords were mainly only in the newspaper for their positive leadership on the streets and the program they were getting involved in. Only a few times were they in the negative spotlight during these years. The worst case was that of Edward Taylor, a CVL member, convicted of murdering a nun in 1969. The execution of vice lords had started a murder for hire business in 1969, and a shooting with the Roman Saints in 1966, along with some other small stories, was just about all that made the papers in a negative light in these years. And when it comes to Bobby Gore, once Bobby Gore was convicted of murder, and then David Dolly moved back east, and the spotlight was back on the vice lord, began to engage in criminal behavior. One of the original members and co-founder, Leonard Calloway, was convicted of murder. 1970, taking down another CVL leader. 1972, CVL leader Kim Goat Parrs was convicted of possession and using stolen U.S. Treasury checks, which was another conviction that really hurt CVL reputation. During the year 1972, the vice lord was still working with Egyptian Cobras to prevent war, so there was still some positive actions going on from CVL. CVL Incorporated was still active as of 1972. Many of the headlines of vice lords committing crime and murder were carried out by other branches like Unknown Vice Lords, Traveling Vice Lords, and Cicero Vice Lords, but CVL violent crimes were much less, as they still struggled to maintain order as the new heroin epidemic was beginning to take over the west side of Chicago in these years. Youths were beginning to partake in the heroin trade as it was putting money in the pockets of desperate west side youth, and as the influence of CVL Incorporated was slowly fading in the early 70s, more youths were getting involved in heroin. Conservative vice lords of North London did not involve themselves in the heroin trade, but the other branches of the overall vice lord nation were getting involved, and this was the years where distinction between the different factions became very important. There's about well, I wanted to read that today because of course, we live in a day and time where we got all this, internet, Wi-Fi, all that, phones, and now we got artificial intelligence. And a lot of this technology being used for criminal purposes. Not for any positive, but for criminal purposes. And see a lot of things being done like those vlogs and things like that. And as a result of some of the things I just read, that what you see. People who didn't want to listen. But you had people who did listen, and you saw the results. A lot of positive things were being done when you listened. But then you had individuals who didn't want to listen. As it's, like I said, when I was reading, we had a lot of conservative vice lords. But then you had, other individuals who didn't want to do or didn't want to listen. And because when you don't want to listen, you start seeing the result. It don't be no more negativity, violence, destruction. And because of the destruction, the violence, individuals didn't want to listen. You see the result in Chicago as well as around America today. Number poverty, and the economic depression. And so, because people didn't want to listen to what was right, like I said, you see the result. And then you see people living like places like right here in Shelby County, in the city of Memphis. See, some people who were living right here left from this city and went to Chicago and went to the state of Illinois, as well as the surrounding states. But when it comes to the city of Chicago and the gang, what you call the gang, the street organizations, some people didn't want to listen. They didn't want to listen to when people were trying to tell them what was right. They didn't want to listen. They were more concerned with trying to be gangsters and mobsters. That's what they was interested in. They didn't want to listen. They either end up getting killed or end up in prison or drug addicts. Or, things like that. Sometimes people go to prison, then get out of prison, but that's about, and still being involved in the same thing, criminal activity. But that's their influence. See, the same influence that got you involved, that got you put in the prison, or or they got you killed. See, that negative influence is still being a negative influence on the same person. Not the ones that's dead, because they dead. But the ones that's not dead, see, the same negative influence, because you ain't want to listen then, and you still walking around still not want to listen. When people trying to tell you what's right. So when you see people making what they call it, a blog, you see what happens when you don't want to listen. You see it. Because you don't be saying nothing that's right, and you're not doing nothing that's right. So that's the result. Then you claim you want to be on a video. See, you still ain't doing nothing right. Because see, conservative white laws, they walking around, they in the city of Chicago, conservative white law. But then when you look at it, any and everybody else, you see the result. They don't want to listen. See, that's that negative influence, that nagging my library. And to see them other codexes as well. And just talking about Gnostic. See, you the field house nigga. You blind, deaf, and dumb. You the field. You out in the field. You also be inside the house. You all that. You do any and everything you can to please your master. All you want to do is make your master happy. That's all you want to do. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your objective is to make your oppressor happy. And to keep your own self downtrodden, oppressed. You're not happy if your oppressor is not oppressing you. Then you got the nerve to get mad when other people try to tell you what's right. Now you're going around looking for somebody on the East Coast. Blind, deaf, and dumb just like you. A field house nigga just like you. Talking about the blood gang, the Crip gang. Go all the way from the East Coast to Los Angeles, California. So they can be in the blood gang, the Crip gang. I know, I already know, I know. Why is it that if you was so, a gang, I guess you couldn't start no gang, But your gang don't have the kind of influence like the people in Chicago. Because see, them the damn niggas that came from down, they came from down here. And then went up to Chicago. Then some of them didn't go to Chicago. The rest of the damn family went out to Los Angeles, California. See, that's the influence. They ain't like they smart or nothing. It's just a lot of black women during them time. They ain't had no birth control. They had these large families. All these damn sisters and brothers. All that 20 kids and all that. some of the the whole, well, some people, whole mama, daddy, and they 20 kids moved up to Chicago, but they had some relatives. They went out to Los Angeles. See, that's the influence. Because see, that nagging my library, talking about some Gnostic, some white supremacy. That's the influence that they have. See, in Chicago right now, they so worried about a blog. They so worried about a blog. They want to be seen. There's some gun that want to be seen, not talking about nothing. They ain't talking about nothing. Just some individuals just standing around in a neighborhood. And the ones who standing around the neighborhood, a bunch of youngins. Who walk around like they don't have no guidance. Carrying guns. Talking about they ops. And then you got some other individuals claiming they trying to work for peace. What kind of con game you trying to run? You got young people carrying guns all over the place. And then you got some individual walking around trying to say they standing for peace. But see, I just read to you. You ain't talking about nothing. You ain't talking about nothing. Nothing that you saying is new. Nothing that you saying is new. See, this is what the problem is. Didn't listen, including them. You didn't listen. See, when people tell you what's right, you don't want to listen. See, it's all about trying to make a name for yourself. You trying to put yourself on a pedestal. You ain't nobody. You ain't no damn body. Didn't nobody really need to hear a damn thing you got to say. All these damn individuals need to do is stop walking their ass around being stupid in these neighborhoods. You ain't got no reason to be standing around in no neighborhood with no guns. If you ain't got no job, if you ain't going to work for 8 hours or more, you just, you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen when people tell you what's right. Get a job. You don't want to listen. You call yourself want to make fast money, thinking you're going to make a whole lot of money real fast by selling drugs. You don't want to listen to when people tell you what's right. To get you a job, stop hanging out on the street, stop carrying illegal guns and weapons and all this. You don't want to listen to people tell you what's right. Didn't nobody need to hear nothing about no peace movement or nothing. Totally unnecessary. If you just listen to what people had already told you, they had already told you. Elvin Pepperlo Perry, the old heads, Alfonso, already told you. They had already told you. I just read it. It's proof. I just read it. that already told you. Even had with it, they try to bring all the street organizations together. They try to put all the street organizations in the LSD. So you have some kind of leadership. You ain't want to listen. You ain't want to listen. That's the same thing today. You ain't want to listen. When people try to tell you what's right, you don't want to listen. There nobody need to hear nothing about no peace or nothing. It's individuals should stop walking around and not want to listen when people tell you what's right. And then you do things that you shouldn't do. Then you make them damn stupid people look like they smart. Because their ass need to go on. They need to do the same thing. They need to listen when people tell you what's right. You need to do the same thing. You need to listen when people tell you what's right. Now, the information that I was reading from, you can refer to ChicagoGangHistory.com. Now, we were talking about Bobby Gore. And as you know, Bobby Gore was a member of the Vice Lord. And just mentioned he was there when the Elvin Pepperlo period, you know, with the old heads and with Alfonso during that period of time when David Dowley was writing that book and all this. And, you know, during that period of time. You know, Bobby Gore had got put in prison, wrongly convicted. Spent 10 years in prison, wrongly convicted. And then when he got out of prison, his conviction was overturned. But you can see Bobby Gore in his movie called Lord Thing. they go a picture of Bobby Gore. So like I was saying, you know, when people tell you what's right, you don't want to listen. You don't want to listen. And then, you know, here it is today. You know, the big thing is the blog. And see, to be honest with you, that's the reason why they be, you know, the ones they're talking about, they trying to stand for peace. See, when I be talking about Gnostic, they don't be telling you the truth. They not trying to do nothing for peace. They be lying. They be lying. That's what I be doing. See, I knew. Years ago, I knew. That's the reason why I do the things I do. Because I know people like them, they be lying. They not trying to do nothing that's right. Only thing they doing is doing the same thing they've been doing. Trying to be violent. Trying to lie. And when you lie, you're not doing what's right. You ain't have no intention of doing nothing that's right. That's what I was doing. And that's what I am doing. Doing what's right. Making sure that narcissism don't be no influence. First of all, it's not no influence on me. And being that it's not no influence on me, I try to make sure that it don't be no influence on anybody else. They be sitting around, they be walking around talking about they syncretizing. If they not syncretized, they'll be trying to eclecticize. Trying to take one little piece of something. For example, prayer. Prayer. See, being eclectic. Well, let's all pray. Let's have a moment of silence. Let's pray. Let's bow our heads and let's have a moment of silence. Let us pray. Okay. We close our eyes and we say we saying a prayer. See, that's eclectic. The one that be syncretized, they try to take in and everything. They try to incorporate in and everything into their, like they were saying, conquered. The conquerors and the one that's been conquered. The one that's conquering That's what syncretizing means. When they conquer somebody, they'll take your culture and your customs and blend it in with theirs. They'll take bits and pieces of it and syncretize. See, that's what that vlog means. That's what that vlog means. See, them individuals, that's what the dirty sheets and the willing sheets had to deal with. See, before they found the Nagamah library, see them other codexes, the Askew Codex, the Berlin Codex, the Bruce Codex. At different times when they found this so-called Gnostic information. See, there was this so-called Indo-European. See, during the period of time when during the Protestant Reformation, see, that so-called Gnostic, them Waldensians and some others were trying to use that Gnostic and the only thing you're doing is being violent. Because you had all those Catholics, they weren't listening to no Gnostic. See, this is how you know when you be lying. You had all those Catholics. They don't listen to no Gnostic. But the criminals, organized crime, what they do? Be violent. They use violence. They use violence. That's why when the Indo-Europeans came over here, they had to come over here with this gang and mob. Because first of all, they had to make sure that the Indo-European listen. So they have to be what? Violent. Because when they brought us over here, black/African American, we was just slaves. They had guns and bullets using violence to keep us under control. But when it comes to the Indo-Europeans, if you didn't listen, violence, they gang up on you. It'd be a mob of other Indo-Europeans they use violence, organized crime, the criminals. the Protestants. It was my intent, but today I'm going to take this time today but on my next video we're going to get right back on prehistoric religion and traditional ancient African religion. We're going to get back on it, as well as anything else, but because it's important. It's important and it's indefinite. But organized crime, the criminals, they use violence. That's all they doing, using violence. The Catholic Church had already refuted Gnosticism. Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyons, together with Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, 5-volume book. 5-volume book. Adversus Heresies, against heresies. Against heresies. Already refuted Gnosticism, proving that Gnosticism was a heresy. A lot of black/African Americans didn't have no education. Denied education during slavery, undereducated and miseducated after slavery. And then the Panamanian, right at the tip of my tongue. Saint Epiphanes of Salome, the Bishop of Cyprus, wrote a 3-volume book titled Panarium. That's the Greek title, but it's also a Latin title, Panarium. Title, when you translate it, means bread basket. Identifying all these so-called Gnostic sects, as well as pagan sects. And who was these people we talking about during that period of time? The Indo-European. The Indo-European. See, this is what white supremacy means. When you identify all these so-called people, talking about some Gnostics and some pagans, the Indo-European. They're talking about syncretizing some so-called polytheists. You're really fake polytheists. Some false polytheism. Because what's real polytheism? Good question. That's a good one. That's a good question. organized crime, criminals. That's all. That were these people, criminals, trying to be organized. And what they do, they make up some kind of religion so they can have some kind of influence. But trying to hold that influence, so what they try to do, use violence. They use violence. That's what they've been doing the whole time, using violence as a method, as a method of persuasion. There's no loyalty. That's the reason why they use violence. Because they'll turn against each other. Always trying to cheat each other. Trying to rob each other. Trying to steal from each other. They use violence. That's what they do. They use violence. I know that today, I wasn't able to get into my prehistoric religion like I wanted to, but we're gonna get back on it. So those are some of the things that we've been going over. The evolution of Earth, time, in the various ways that we calculate time, evolution, the origin of life. So these are things that I've been going over, talking about. So we're going to continue to talk about these things. Like I said, on today's video, I want to talk about the conservative vice lord and how people try to lie, like the Blood gang, the Crip gang, try to lie, as well as the gangster disciples and the black gangster new breed. You know, you try to lie. Then you got members of the conservative vice lords, as well as other vice lords, stones and disciples, you know, the black disciples and all this, just individuals who just don't do what's right, which is tell the truth. Some people just didn't know the truth. They had never been taught, so they ain't know. But what you have today is that people in the past didn't try to do what they wasn't intending on doing. The only thing they was intending on doing is being a gangster or a mobster, being a criminal. That's all they want to do, and then be violent. People that's their objective, is to be violent. And see, you can just see today is that people try to use violence for entertainment, as an excuse for entertainment. Rap, hip hop. People glorify violence because in their mind they think they can get fast money off of making some kind of rap song, claiming that somebody's their ops. So they're gonna say some kind of rhyme about their ops. And they, in their mind, I'm gonna get some kind of big paycheck. I'm gonna be but that's a motivation. That they make up these lies as a motivation. Rap. And then you got these people talking about peace. Well, see, they lie. They don't tell you that they still be doing the same thing, talking about some Gnostic, but thinking that they can go around and talk to these different individuals, these different street organizations, and claiming that they're trying to have peace. But you be lying. You lying. You lying. Look, I'm going to come back on my next video. We're going to get right back on prehistoric religion. We're going to get right, because we're going to be on that indefinitely. Now, I know I be talking about my idea and everything, but let me say this. That's a serious thing. And never, see, like I always said from the very beginning, there was never any intent, no criminal intent whatsoever. See, I leave my music video, there are opportunities in entertainment, But my thing was that people were lying, and I knew people were lying, and it wasn't really no profitable thing for me to do, because I already knew what the circumstance and the situation was. So for me to be involved in entertainment, in general entertainment, I knew that it wasn't going to be any benefit on my part. in order for there to be benefit, I had to do what I'm doing, expose these people with these lies, and deal with their ass the way they need to be dealt with. And entertainment would then be profitable for me as well as for others. Now, I'm still this part of working on my entertainment. I have to do these things just so I can be profitable. See, other individuals try to put themselves in a position where they can just do, which is nothing they really. It's still the same thing. Rap, a lot of rap, and then they claim hip hop. But like I've been telling you, whack. You try to take other people's artistic genius and then call yourself rapping. Somebody else in the past, just like, for example, Barry White, and well as others, took their music. Marvin Gaye took his music. You know what I'm saying? Johnny Taylor. I can go on and on. I can go on and on. It's this long list of people's music that has been sampled. Whack. Took other people's music and put some so-called rap lyrics to somebody else's music. Whack! But I'm working on now I ain't gonna be always, it may have took a little time, which I ain't had no problem with in the first place, because it ain't just about me. When you talk about Gnosticism or religion in general, this goes all the way back. Human beings suffering. Human beings mistreating other human beings. So it's not just about me. Of course, I have my ambitions, my aspirations, and I'm gonna achieve what I set out to do. But like I said, I know what the circumstance and the situation is. People lying about Gnosticism, about religion. Now, I'm not going to sit there and let nobody stand in my way. So that's the reason why I do the things I do, expose them, and I'll be able to do what I intended to do, is to be prosperous and successful. And then have anything to do with no criminal activity. Just natural talent. And I'm still going to achieve my goal. Like I said earlier, if you want to have peace, tell the truth. You ain't gonna never have no peace without truth. You ain't got nothing to stand on, because you still lying. And when you lie, it's gonna lead to violence. When you stand on truth, it'll bring peace. So you can make all the vlogs in the neighborhoods all day, and you can claim that you're trying to have peace, but you're not, because you lie. You lying. Just like Protestants. You lie. You ain't gonna never be right. You ain't know about organized crime, criminals, and it's always violence. Always violence. Amongst them, first of all, see, they try to suppress it. But to be honest with you, they don't get along with each other. The men trying to oppress the women. with narcissism. They be violent with the women. That's the first thing. Then the so-called men being violent with each other. Then you ain't got to worry about women being violent with women, because the men being violent with the women. They're damn near kill you. You live in fear. All the women live in fear. And what you gonna do? Make another one? You who already being victimized by a man, what you gonna do? You gonna be violent with a woman? You terrified yourself. It's a wonder the man didn't kill you. So he can have sex with a man. That's what that Gnostic mean. And then talking about a man being violent, that's being violent. See, you ain't gonna tell the truth. You ain't gonna tell the truth. You gonna lie. Like I said, I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. I got to end today. But like I said, I'm working on my music. And I'm gonna be working on it. And like I said, hey, there ain't never been no attempt to be no criminal. Didn't have to do that. No. My main thing is all this lying. That's the problem I've been having. People lying. And I ain't finna sit around and let nobody victimize me. No. So, again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also known by BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff, it's in the state of Tennessee. Thank my family, my support, but you continue to support and continue to pray to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for all the blessing and guidance provides all with. And I'm going to come back on my next video. We're going to get right back on prehistoric religion. And you take care of yourself. Wish each and every one of you very best.